My name is Chiraag Bains, and I'm Director of Legal Strategies for Demos, a civil rights organization that champions ways to address inequity in our political and economic systems, putting communities of color at the center of how and why we do our work. I'm also the child of immigrants. I took the citizenship test and naturalized at age 18, raising my right hand and pledging to support the Constitution. Over time, each member of my family followed, right on through to my 99-year-old grandfather, who is proud to be able to cast his vote. As new Americans learn, the promise of this country is that every person has a voice, and every person ought to be counted. Our history has been one of struggle to make that promise a reality, particularly when it comes to race. From the dispossession of Native peoples, to slavery, to Jim Crow, to the Chinese Exclusion Acts, to the war on drugs, we have often fallen short. Today, voting rights are under attack, and our big money political system allows billionaires and corporations to drown out the voices of everyday Americans. These dynamics have serious racial equity consequences. The problems that are most pressing for people of color, economic inequality, education disparities, police abuse, just to name a few, are sidelined or exacerbated. The For the People Act takes a comprehensive approach to voting and campaign finance reform. First, our democracy is stronger when more people participate. But voter suppression poses a clear and present danger to our system. One increasingly common tactic is aggressive voter purges. Last year, Demos won an injunction to stop Indiana from removing thousands of voters from the rolls, without notice, based on Crosscheck, a program that purports to identify people who have moved out of state, but is wrong an estimated 99% of the time based on academic research. Just last week, we sued Texas to stop the state from purging voters. Texas's Secretary of State announced that up to 95,000 non-citizens are registered and up to 58,000 have actually voted. The state attorney general and President Trump quickly fired off tweets alleging voter fraud. That claim is false. The overwhelming majority, if not all, of these individuals are naturalized citizens like our client, Nivian Saleh. Nivian, who describes the Declaration of Independence as the greatest political document I can imagine, was horrified to find herself on the list. She told us she felt apprehensive, insulted, and angry that her registration could be canceled. We also sued Ohio over the practice of targeting infrequent voters for purging. Ohio turned voting into a use it or lose it right. That also had a discriminatory impact. Voters in majority black neighborhoods were purged at over twice the rate as voters in majority white neighborhoods in Cincinnati. Due to a court order, 7,500 wrongly purged Ohioans were able to vote in the 2016 election. Now, unfortunately, the Supreme Court later upheld the program 5-4. H.R. 1 would correct the court's mistake and ensure that voters are removed only based on reliable evidence. Voter suppression has been on the rise in other ways since the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013. At least 23 states have passed new restrictive voting laws: photo ID, cuts to early voting, polling place closures. And now, under President Trump, the Justice Department, where I worked for 6.5 years, has slowed voting rights enforcement, even switching sides in key cases. For these reasons, it's critical that H.R. 1 commits to restoring the Voting Rights Act. And it has proactive measures like automatic voter registration and same-day registration that ensure more Americans can take part in our elections. Now, we also must curb the distorting influence of money in politics. Less than 1% of the population provides the majority of campaign funds. Just 25 people poured $600 million into the 2016 election. This donor class is overwhelmingly white, wealthy, and male, and its policy preferences are far out of step with those of communities of color and working people of all backgrounds. Our big money political system also functions as a barrier to entry for candidates of color because they lack access to the same networks of rich friends and business associates that white candidates have access to. When candidates do run, they raise on average 47% less than their white counterparts. This act would curb the influence of big money in politics in our elections through the small donor match program and the democracy voucher program. America's brightest moments have involved welcoming people into the political process. The For the People Act fits into that tradition. It will do more than any legislation since the civil rights era to build a truly inclusive democracy. Demos strongly supports it.
Thank you very much.